welcome back to another episode of the Stud at Home Mom. And I thought we would just do a year in review of our first year homeschooling and homeschooling our kindergartner. And then you could kind of say we homeschooled a little bit of pre-K with my now 4-year-old. So I have that background in teaching, so I kind of had a good gist of kind of how I wanted kindergarten to look, and I incorporated a lot of Charlotte Mason philosophy. We joined a classical conversations community group, and that kind of made a lot for how I taught certain things like history and geography. So we had that one day a week, and then we had nature school one day a week that we typically attended. And then later on the year, for a brief time, we joined another co-op. We only ended up meeting for maybe about a few weeks before the whole quarantine was implemented. So that was basically discontinued. And that particular co-op was mostly kids from 4 to about 7 years of age. And it was just really a few families that were doing this. And so, I think our kindergarten year went really well. We started our day, because I incorporated a lot of Charlotte Mason, I made sure to keep things short, sweet, and incorporate some of her ideas. Now, however, the Charlotte Mason method does not recommend starting formal lessons until the child is about in first grade. So my daughter was already 5.5 when she technically started kindergarten, and she wanted to be in kindergarten like some of her other little kids that she knows, because she knows that's what you do. When you turn 5, you go to kindergarten. So we started our day with singing a hymn, doing our catechism, and we would read a short Bible story. This was something that the 4-year-old also participated in. And then once or twice a week, we worked on a particular habit. And we also did scripture memory, so sometimes the Bible verse they were memorizing kind of related to the habit. And I used Laying Down the Rails. This is produced by Simply Charlotte Mason. And so whatever habit we were working on for several weeks, we did one of just the little lessons out of here. Sometimes it was a story, a poem, a quote, scripture. Sometimes a lot of it was really kind of way over their heads, because this is designed for really kids of any and all ages, but sometimes they still got the gist of it. And we were working on kind of developing habits, and it was kind of like a character ed program, because some of it was just, moral habits as well. Then from there we did we would do our phonics, and I used a modified version of Project Read curriculum, because that is what I used to teach phonics for 3 years when I worked in the public school as a reading resource teacher. So I was already very familiar with the program, and I knew what it was, and I basically just had copies that I had made when I taught, and I just brought them with me, so I had every kind of thing that I knew I was doing and just supplemented things here and there. And so, we'd do things like reading Bob books or little books I'd find on the internet. And this was kind of just an example of kind of where we kind of ended, was working on final consonant blends. So there was just certain words, and we would do flashcards and spelling, and she'd practice reading sentences, did things that were like auditory, worked on phonemic awareness, a lot of like kindergarten appropriate skills. And I would say she probably is about where, had she been in public school, she's probably about where she would have been, kind of probably about the same level. I would say she's right there at the end of a kindergarten, beginning first grade reading level, kind of what I would typically expect to see. And we would supplement also with doing reading eggs for about at least 10 minutes a day. And then for math, I used level 1 master books. That was supposed to be kind of Charlotte Mason inspired, because it had little stories of little characters and them at their grandparents' farm learning these certain concepts. And it was not very rigorous, it was very easy. It was something she would do in 5 to 10 minutes every day, And some of the stuff was kind of redundant just to keep practicing review. And it's like I kind of felt like once she kind of really knew and understood how to do it, there was really no need to have to practice it as much. Maybe just kind of touch on it a little here and there. And then we used our classical conversations curriculum. Not that there. And this is what I used a lot to teach my history. So whatever they were learning that week for history, I had at least one picture book that went with it. So for one of the weeks, they learned about the Magna Carta, and it was a lot of European history and world history from the Middle Ages up to basically the 90s, and it included a little bit of South Africa because it ended with apartheid being abolished in South Africa. So I would just find a book that related to that history sentence. Sometimes it was a book related to the science. So one of the science thing was parts of the food chain: producer, consumer, decomposer. So I might have found a book on that. I didn't do a whole lot of the science books just because they were very dry and kind of boring for a little kid. Like, they kind of even weren't really all that interested in looking at the picture. Kind of outside things like the human body, they really aren't that interested in non-fiction type texts. It's kind of boring to them. And sometimes, depending on whatever the geography was, so if it was a certain country, maybe when they were doing Norway, we read something by Jane Brett, for example. So I was just trying to make the connection of like, oh, look, here we're singing this fun song, and here's a book that kind of goes along with that. And we would usually most of our memory work for classical conversations was mostly done just singing it in the car, listening it in the car. I did not make a big emphasis on memorizing it because I don't care if she memorizes it. This was just an opportunity for her to kind of have a more formal type classroom setting where she is with other kids and doing things like that. So hopefully getting stuff together, and what we're thinking about next year as well for her going into first grade. We're definitely going to continue classical conversations, and we'll be adding a lot more to our curriculum. But for the most part, it was we spent about an hour a day, and if there were days that we skipped certain parts, we skipped certain parts. We did do a calendar time as well at the beginning of the day, and kind of very, very kindergarten like structure, of course, with just way less to do. Because now that I think about it, when I look back on my teaching and being in those kindergarten classrooms, and it's like, how did they find stuff to do with them all day long when, like, I'm done in an hour? Granted, it's only one kid, and I have my other two in there that they're kind of doing little things on the side, but it's like we're done with everything in an hour. And yet kids spend all day in kindergarten with busy work when you can learn something easy. It is harder though when you are in a public school and you have to teach 20 kids instead of just a few, where they are working at their own pace. There were definitely challenges, like when she had days that she was not really in the mood to do work, so I would just kind of shorten stuff even more. Sometimes when your kid acts a little on the bratty side, you kind of can lose your patience a little bit more. But we continue to just kind of work through things and persevere when things were, I think sometimes would get a little boring for her after a while. At the beginning she was so enthusiastic about everything, and after a while it was just kind of like, routine, and then there were the days, are we going to do school yet? When are we going to do school? And I think it's like with a lot of kids, there's the excitement and newness of something, and then after a while you just kind of get, kind of bored with it, and things, yeah. So with classical conversations, I tutored, so that made it fun too for myself as well. Anyway, I'll do another video of what we will be doing for first grade, since a little bit of that is still in the works. Leave me a comment of some of the things that you did for your kindergarten kiddo, or if you have any questions on any other specific curriculum or things like that, or if you want me to review more specific things, I would be happy to do that. And don't forget to subscribe.